I just finished reading The Twilight Garden. Finally. This was a long book. I feel like this book's main point would be the characters. The winning point, the characters are supposed to be well written. The setting also would be the other winning point, because okay, so it is about first a shared garden that two neighbors share, and then both of them, they start getting mail from random person showing how the garden used to be back in the day. They see it on photos, they see these two women on the photos, and it's a journey of these two neighbors becoming friendlier and on better terms with each other. It's kind of like their personal development through the seasons and through the garden, through sharing the garden. However, my biggest issue with this book was that it was not well written, in my opinion, and the characters were all the same. I felt like I could switch out a character's dialogue with another character's dialogue on another page, and it would be the same. It would be the same effect, it would be the same writing, it would be the same everything. The characters were not unique and deep enough to sell me this cozy idea of a garden, of a shared garden, of a community garden, of these characters' cozy little London neighborhood. I felt like it would have been important for the characters to be different from each other and see how they can manage their lives or get used to each other even though they have differences. I wasn't as interested in the setting, or I wasn't as convinced by the setting as I should have been for this to take effect and for it to have emotional impact. The writing style wasn't so good. There were a few weird things that I couldn't place. For example, the activism out of nowhere. There wasn't one strong Miye character. Like, okay, there was maybe one Miye character that was kind of strong. Other than that, no Miye characters, basically. And nobody knows how to communicate. Like, nobody communicated at all whatsoever. For me, this is a 2.5. So, first of all, I have two updates to make. I mentioned in a previous video, I think, that I will be reading Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea, and I did say I am not sure if I will be reviewing it or not, because it's just not really for me. I wouldn't read it on my own, but I read it together with my boyfriend. It was kind of a co-reading process. We picked it up because it was short and because I was trying to ease him into reading fiction. That's why I thought that this size would be a perfect starting point. It was a good story, we finished it quite fast, but I wouldn't rate it, and if I did, which I couldn't bring myself to exclude this book on my Goodreads and Storygraph pages, so I did give it a 3.5, only because giving it a 3 felt like a disgrace to Ernest Hemingway and a classic. I don't know, it wasn't for me. That's all I can say. Even though it's so short, it was a bit dragged out. I feel like for such a story, it could have been a bit faster paced. It was difficult for me to understand because of the excessive use of like ship language, marine language, fishing terminology, which I just know nothing about. So it was a bit difficult to understand at some points, especially because English is not my native language. It was a good read. I like that we read it together. It was a very nice experience. But that's all I can say about this tiny work of art. And the other update is that I started reading A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. Naomi Naomi Novik. There's no other way I can pronounce that, actually. Okay, so yeah, I started it I think a few weeks ago, and I'm already more than halfway through. Let me tell you, I am enjoying this book immensely. I have already made plans to take out the second part from the library. I reserved it, so when it's ready for me I can go pick it up. Somebody actually recommended me this book based on the fact that I really love the Edelstein trilogy from Kerstin Gier, the ruby red, the English titles, sapphire blue and smaragd. I don't even know that trilogy. I love it. Never read it in English though. I usually reread it every like 1 or 2 years. Maybe the next time I can try the English translation. I read it when I was a teenager, so maybe I'm biased, I don't know, but I just loved it so much. I was recommended this book because of really enjoying that series. It was a perfect recommendation because I am really enjoying it, almost finished, and I can't wait to start the second book of this series. I was going to read one of the books that I took out from the library. The thing is, I realized that one of the books that I was approved of on NetGalley is going to be published at the end of June, and I will probably not finish reading it by the end of June, but still, I actually started reading Ashes Don't Bloom because that's more of a priority right now. So far it's something very different than what I usually read. That's already a win, I guess, because a step out of my comfort zone. Let's see what it brings. Let's see if I like this genre or tone, this mood, this setting. Hello, welcome all to this lovely corner of the internet. In spectacular news, I have just finished reading Ashes Don't Bloom by Lenore Knox, which was gifted to me through NetGalley. On the same note, thank you NetGalley, and thank you to the author who provided me with this copy of the book. I feel very honored. Thank you very much. Second of all, I would like to emphasize that what I am saying here is my own opinion, which is subjective. I really do try to be kind and thankful, but I also think that each author and each artist deserves a fair and honest evaluation, reviews and opinions that are not sugar-coated. So just because I got this book, I didn't want to alter my opinion of it. With that out of the way, I have to say that this book was not my cup of tea. It's just what it is. I wouldn't read it or something similar again. Now, the book focuses on 4 main characters: Sedona, Delilah, Diesel, and Duke. All of these characters got their own POV chapters, which proved to be quite early on unnecessary and too much. When I started reading, I was completely prepared to just get, for example, 2 POVs. My expectation was that I would be reading the 2 girls' POVs, but then when I saw the first time, I think, Diesel's personal POV chapter, I thought that this was probably unnecessary, and it did prove to be unnecessary. It didn't add anything to the story. Okay, so we are focusing on these characters who also have their own POV chapters, and the 2 relationships between these characters respectively. In my opinion, it would have added more depth to the story, would have gotten closer to the characters if we focused on one relationship and maybe the other was happening in the background, well, a little bit less detail or something. So just focusing on one relationship or focusing on one character's emotions and that character's relationship, or focusing on two characters' emotions and the relationship from those characters' point of views, like the two sides or something like that, I think it would have given more depth, convenience, and personal relatability to the story. The personalities of the characters felt not too chiseled, not too detailed. Just focusing on one or two characters or one relationship could have fixed that problem for us to feel more connected to each character and feel like each character has its own personality. As it was now, that was not the case. So the story, in just a couple of words, everything's very hot. Basically, that's it. Everything's very hot, everything's very poor, and very dramatic. That's basically the setting. All in all, actually, the setting is very well painted. In my opinion, the setting was quite nice to read. Especially as a non-American, I felt like I was part of the landscape, kind of. It was interesting to be included in this gang-driven Nevada, Arizona aesthetic. It was different than what I'm used to, which was quite nice. This was my first time reading smut in an actual book. So far, I have only read smut in fanfiction, and let me say, I don't think I'm going to start reading them in books now. It was not my vibe. I felt like it was a bit weird in the story. Let me get back to that a bit later. No, actually, I'm getting into it now. Wait a minute. So, due to all of the smut, I missed the plot. This was a bit of a typical plot, what plot kind of story. I couldn't tell you exactly what the plot was. And I do lay it at the hand of the too much smut. As a general rule of thumb, I usually like some serious character development in the books that I read. That's what gives it flavor, what I value in a book. And here, I didn't find that. I didn't see any or enough character development. I also like to be able to at least begin to describe what the plot is of a book. Like, that's ideal. And here, I couldn't tell you what it was about. I could not. I don't know. So, and come to the ending. Again, no spoilers, because in this channel I like to avoid spoilers. But regarding the ending, I understand that this book is the beginning of a series. However, in my humble opinion, each book in a series should still be able to hold its own as a good book. Like, we can consider that it is part of a series, but it should be able to be considered on its own as well. And if on its own it doesn't do so well, especially as a first book, people will just not continue reading the series. The basic idea of a series, in my opinion, or at least a good series, is something along the lines of one overarching drama or plot line or complication is going on throughout the number of books throughout the series, but in each single book there are several like smaller dramas, either connected or not connected to the main drama or main complication. Ideally, it should contribute somehow to the major complication. It should be revealed to do something with the major complication, but it's not a necessity. It can be separate from the major complication. There can be like relationship problems in a book, some minor political drama, small things that you can still root for that still give the book its arc of overcoming some complications, some issue, facing some event that strengthens our main character or characters. In this book, I am considering that it is part of a series. Near the last pages, the very last part of the book, we got introduced to some kind of a plot. Immediately, two big dramatic things happened, which were basically the first real impactful events that happened in this book. Of those two big dramatic events, one was solved, which is great. The other one was hinting at the second book. But given that some other events that happened in that introduction of a plot were not resolved, which is completely fine, because they seem to be some bigger overarching problems, given that they were not resolved at the end of the book, compared to that, the smaller dramatic event that happened is not warranted to not be solved by the end of the book, in my opinion. I was looking forward to that relationship complication, to that misunderstanding basically in a relationship to be solved, but it wasn't, and it felt like such a minor thing that it's really just annoying that it's not solved, not interesting or exciting or motivating to me to read the second book, for example. Therefore, given all of the reasons that I just listed, I have to give Ashes Don't Bloom 2 stars, unfortunately, but with the huge asterisk that I completely understand that somebody would enjoy this. It was just not my cup of tea. But if somebody loves reading smut, action for the sake of action, or about cars and motorbikes, or like this gang, poverty, aesthetic type of thing, then definitely go ahead and give it a read. This could be a good one. Oh, hi. Hello. I have also read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Janet McCurdy. Read is kind of a misnomer in this case because I listened to the audiobook version, which, to be honest, was a really good choice. I definitely enjoyed listening to the book. It did add a lot of emotion and context that it was read by the author. I felt a bit personally connected to it in a way because I grew up watching iCarly, and so I saw this little girl on screen, and also I heard her voice reading the story. Maybe that gave it some personal inclination towards me liking the book, but in general, I felt like it was a good psychological rundown of a serious issue, actually a multitude of serious issues, a very interesting telling of a disturbed childhood, which I can only imagine must have been very difficult to go through. It was very emotional and disturbing to listen to, and very impactful for sure. I really don't know what to do with this book. I can't say it has an inspiring end or something. I mean, it does in a way, but it's not like, oh, it will change your life. It's just an interesting piece of somebody's life. Like if you were listening to a friend telling you all this, and you would be very sad for them. That was how I felt listening to this book. And that's why I also think it's a good idea to listen to this book as an audiobook, because you can kind of treat it like a friend telling you a very sad story. But it also has a lot of humor, so don't be put off by the disturbing and sad part. I do recommend it a lot. I feel like it is a good read if you are in a mental space where you can handle disturbing at the moment. So yeah, give it a go. Oh yes, and I gave it 5 stars. It was really good.